drill, go ahead in the chat box and introduce yourself. Let us know your name, the city and the country where you're joining us from, and of course, what you do here on Zoom, on Facebook, on YouTube, on LinkedIn. Go ahead and happily connect with other people. You're going to meet amazing people here in the comment section. And like I always say, you never know where you will find a client, you find a partner, you find an investor. There are so many things you can find when you boldly communicate who you are and what you do. So go ahead and do that while we get set to start in a few minutes. Beautiful. All right, for those who are just joining in right now, we are doing some introductions. So go ahead in the chat box. Let us know your name, the city and the country where you're locating us, when you're joining us from, and happily let us know what you do. And for business people, like I always say, always add your contact. Make it easy for somebody to find you. I always say be findable. Be very findable if you're in business. All right. Beautiful. Awesome. Keep it coming, people. Keep it coming. If you have been here from day 1, day 2, and then today, day 3, can you type present in the chat box? Type the word present in the chat box. If you have been here from day 1, day 2, day 3, go ahead and type the word present in the chat box. Nice, nice, nice. Wow, that's good. That's good, that's good, that's good, that's good. All right, for those who are following on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube, the team is tracking you. So if you say anything, that we're going to see you live and direct. All right, we are going to begin. Anybody who is late will catch us as we move. All right, good to see the people on YouTube. Edward. Beautiful. I strongly believe that what we are going to learn today will transform your life forever. I strongly believe so. I strongly believe so. Whether you're starting, whether you are in your growth stage, whether you are in your expansion stage, the focus for today is the leverage and dominance model as a tool for creating more wealth. So in other words, especially if you run a business, you're planning to go into business, if you if you want to go beyond just making chicken change here and there, and you truly want to make good money in business, then I guarantee you, this is something that you need to know how to do in business. All right. All right. You're welcome again here on YouTube, on Facebook, and everywhere else. If this is your first time, for those who are here on Zoom, you are probably coming from one of my communities that I run, or a newsletter and all of that. But for those who have been part of my community for a few years, you know that every year towards my birthday, which is the 2nd of September, I always organize a special teaching program for 2 days, 3 days, depending on how I feel led. And I handle a few certain key topics to cover some key things, right? And in this season, I was looking under the business topics and industry teaching topics. I was looking at the asset activation model, judicious utility cycle, and of course, the leverage and dominance model. And these 3 days, the focus has been around increasing wealth creation possibilities. In other words, what are the various strategies and techniques that people can use to increase their ability to make more money, right? That has been the main concept behind the day 1, day 2, and day 3. And we are going to be rounding up today. And I believe that if you practice what I'm going to show you, I strongly believe it is going to cause a major shift in whatever you are building or you are thinking to start building. Okay. And this is something that I've used a few times with different clients and myself. And we have always seen incredible results when this strategy is applied. Okay. Awesome. What is going on? Okay. All right, welcome again, everybody. So we're starting today on a high note. So we're looking at this particular structure or strategy or framework that if you are in a space in your life, especially if you're thinking of starting a business or you have a business or even a side hustle, but anything that you're doing, even your career, anything that you're doing right now, and you are in that spot where you're wondering, how can I produce more results? How can I create more wealth through what I am doing? This will help you. This will give you the answer that you are looking for. So today we are looking at the leverage and the dominance model. In other words, what can you leverage and how can you use it to experience dominance in the industry that you play? In other words, how can you compound influence and exercise some form of control that produces or positions you as a major player in that industry and consequently creating wealth? You see, like I always say, if you are ever going to build wealth, if you're ever going to increase your money making opportunities, there are some things about the industry, there are some things about the economy, there are some things about your nation, there are some things about the sector where you're operating that you just have to know, right? And the challenge that many people have in creating wealth and making more money from what they do, especially either career-wise or business-wise, is because they don't have certain body of knowledge that can enable them to be able to create that. Like I always say, you see, wealth creation is both an art and a science. It is not guesswork. That's why there are very few people you can see that they guessworked and they experience financial freedom or abundance. You don't guesswork it, right? That's why if you study research, it says that majority of people, more than 90% of people who made money through gambling, through lottery, after 7 years, they get broke. Why? Because if you get money through gambling, if you suddenly become rich and you did not build your way into riches and wealth, when you suddenly become rich, you will not know what to do to stay rich and to multiply the money that came in, because you don't guesswork it. You need to know the science, the principles, the strategies, the frameworks, the mental models that you need to keep on applying to be able to do that. It's the same as uh, um, like in my MBA program, my research was around family-owned businesses in Africa. And if you study many family-owned businesses, they hardly transition to the second generation. Or when they transition, they cannot last more than 4 years because the parents understood the businesses, the models, the value chain, the commercial capabilities, and what have you. But then, if they did not integrate their kids properly into the business, when their kids take over the business, they don't know, or they don't have the same commercial capabilities and abilities to be able to run the business at the same level that their parents did. Right. And in this work of coaching and training and consulting, many people you meet every day, they desire to make more money. There is no human being that doesn't want to make more money. But when you start talking and exchanging with them, you will notice that they don't even have up to 1% of the knowledge that can enable them to make more money. Right. And one of those things that you should know how to do to create more wealth, especially if you are in business, you are in the private sector, or you run a side hustle, or you run your own business, or you're thinking of starting a business, is to understand what I'm going to teach you today, which I call the leverage and dominance model. Or how can you compound influence and control in an industry, in a sector, and be able to evolve and build something that can stand the test of time. Like I always say, when you study the society, you will see that the society is a pyramid structure. There are people that are at the top, and majority, the middle class, the lower class, the poor people are at the bottom, right? And the people at the top are the ones you can call them the elites. The elites not only because they have a lot of money, but the elite also in the way they think, their mental intelligence, the kind of information that they have access to, the kind of body of knowledge and wisdom that they command, right? That also makes up part of the elite status, right? Now, the elite disruptors that people get to admire across different industries, these are people that they don't just play the game. You see, many people in the lower class at the bottom of the pyramid, they just live life. They just Some people even live like life like it's a joke, it's a game. But the elite, they live life with the concept of how do I understand the rules and the principles and even the laws, and how can I use these laws, these rules and principles to my advantage? Or even to the extent, how can I influence these rules to favor me? How can I influence these principles to favor me? Right? And in business, or if you're in anything that you're making money, survival is not enough. And that's why survival mindset is going to keep you small and broke. So you need to go a step further. You need to be able to start thinking of, how can I shape the entire industry? How can I go from survival to being an industry shaper, an industry mover, to be the person that does not only, consume the crumbs, but how can I own or literally become a key stakeholder in the industry? Follow me carefully. Because one way to think, if you are truly serious about wealth creation and power, a few months ago I had a special event just for the men in my communities. We called it the Gentlemen's Summit. And I was saying that if you're a serious man in your life, ladies involved, but I was talking to men. Some of us say this right now. If you're a serious man in your life, there is a way of thinking that if you don't have, you're going to disappoint yourself and your wife and your children. That is how life is. And life will not pity you. That's a fact, right? So, one way to think is, how can I use my existing resources, my existing achievements, my existing success to control market direction or to leverage the opportunities in the industry where I am a player and be able to achieve more? And I hope when I use the word industry, we all understand. Industry or sector means the area where you are operating as a professional. We have experts or professionals in the technology industry. We have experts and professionals in agriculture. We have experts and professionals in healthcare, in education, right? In religion and spirituality. In what else? Here on Zoom and on Facebook, where do you belong? Type your own industry, right? If you know your industry, type it. Because if you're serious about business, and that's why I always talk about, I taught one time to my mentees about industry intelligence. If you're going to make it in this life, there is one thing that you cannot manage to know. You must be good at, which is industry intelligence, right? What is the industry you play in, and do you have the required intelligence to succeed in that particular industry? All right, go ahead and give me feedback in the chat box. Comment your industries. Which industry are you in? As a professional, as an expert, as a business owner, which industry are you running your business in? Comment in the chat box, in the comment section. Give me some feedback. So I want to use practical examples when I'm teaching also. All right. If those who are silent, it's like I said, I'm confused. I don't know my industry. If you don't know your industry type, I don't know. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. All right. I see agriculture. I see banking. That's finance. All right. So I see fashion. Good. Network marketing. I see education. All right. Keep it coming. If you're silent, it's like I'm lost. And that's very dangerous for you. You need to find yourself, right? You need to situate yourself in an industry. It's very important. It's a very important thing to discover. I always fondly say, it's my personal opinion, right? I always fondly say that one of the best gifts that you can give yourself on your 25th birthday is to know the industry where you're going to be a voice or a major player in. And of course, you can play across a few industries. You can balance healthcare and technology. You can balance finance and technology. But one of the best gifts you can give yourself is to know that, hey, you know what? As I live this life, I am dedicating the rest of my life to build and create impact, influence, and make money from this particular industry. Okay. All right. That's good. Now that I know the various industries represented, I'll do my best to give examples around these industries. All right. So, like I was saying, one important way to know how to think is to know how you can use existing success resources to be able to control either market direction or to be able to create more wealth opportunities for yourself. And I'm going to use examples from big companies and then smaller ideas so you see how this concept of leverage and dominance model actually works. Now, for example, you see, there's a company that we all know about, Apple, right? Apple was able to transform from a computer, from majorly being a computer company into what I prefer to call a global ecosystem builder. And if there is one company that has demonstrated this concept of leverage and dominance so well, it is Apple. So Apple demonstrated that leverage creates dominance. If you are going to dominate in your local community, in your nation, in your industry, you need to understand how to use leverage to create dominance. And I'm going to explain. Another company that did this so well is the Chinese company Tencent, right? They started by building what you can call messaging apps for the Chinese population. But they later on expanded into payments, into gaming, and even into finance. If we come into Africa, one of the major companies that is doing this so well is Flutterwave, right? And Flutterwave shows how African startups and even established corporations can be able to scale by leveraging on partnerships. So their partnerships with the banking sector enable them to literally begin to control digital payments across Africa. Follow me carefully. If you understand this thing, you become a better builder and a better wealth creator, right? So the real measure of success is not just your ability to make money today. No, you need to go further. You need to begin to think, how can I be a major player that I can actively contribute in the direction where the industry is going to, and literally knowing where to position myself to make most of the money out of this industry. That's how people think. If you're going to really be a wealth creator, you think at that level. That's elite thinking, right? So, for example, many of us know Netflix. We watch movies on Netflix. I'm going to give these big examples, then I bring it to smaller examples so you understand practically what I'm trying to tell you. So, Netflix proved that by moving from renting DVDs, they went into streaming. They started by building a streaming platform where people can put their movies on the platform, and then people rent or pay a subscription fee to now stream the movies. But they later on moved into what you can now call global content production. So Netflix has teams all over the world producing movies. They even partner with movie house and finance them, and they produce movies in the name of Netflix. What they're trying to do is they're trying to use leverage in order to dominate the film and streaming industry. You see that? That's why I said that the real measure of success, if you're thinking about wealth creation, look, if you're thinking about living hand to mouth and making small money, this is not for you. I'm talking about people that are thinking in terms of, hey, how can I double the money I make? How can I double wealth creation? How can I scale it to a whole new level? How can I move from being a small player to being a major voice in my industry, in my country, in my continent, and why not globally? Right? So, as an industry leader, as a professional, you don't just enter the market. No, you go beyond, because all of us right now, we are in the market. We are in different industries. But you begin to go beyond just being one of the players or one of the individuals in the market, to begin to think in terms of, how can I be one of the people moving the market, literally shaking the market? How can I be one of the people that actively contributes to the revolving of the market or the industry where I am? You see, because if you're somebody who studies economics, you're somebody who studies different companies, right? You will notice that the strongest companies expand from one strength into adjacent territories in order to control many things. I'm going to give you an example. For example, if let's take Africa, for example, Dangote, right? You can see how Dangote shows how you can control the cement sector, get into energy, get into logistics, get into fast consumer goods. And when you're able to think at this realm, it allows you to be a major influence in the entire economies of different countries. So when people see Dangote today as a major voice, as a powerful person, and as a powerful enterprise, no, he did not get there by guesswork. There was a whole 30-year plan. There was a whole 50-year plan that, hey, these are the things we are going to do. These are the kinds of industries we are going to get into in order to dominate nations and the African continent. So, as an entrepreneur, as a professional, as an industry expert, you need to begin to think at that level. Why? Because every great disruptor, because I spent time to study this, every great disruptor, like let's say from Microsoft to MTN in Africa, if you study these different institutions, every great disruptor and enterprise, they they were able to win, and they are still winning by their ability to convert what they had at the time as small leverage into industry-wide influence. So if you're here right now, there are many of you here that I know you that you run businesses full-time. So as an entrepreneur that you're full-time, you are not just comfortable at you are able to make some money every month. You're able to get the clients to pay you every day. That's good. But how can you begin to create a thought process and a goal or a journey where you're looking at how can I go from just being one of the small businesses in this sector to being one of the businesses that can exercise industry-wide influence or even industry-wide control? Again, if you're thinking about wealth creation, this is a thought pattern that you must be thinking about consistently. And again, this is not about, because dominance is not about destroying competitors. No, you don't need to destroy competitors to be able to say that you are a dominant force. No, dominance is better than that. Dominance is about ensuring that how can you position yourself and be a major voice that without you, the industry is incomplete. Without you, a sector is incomplete. The competitors are there. But the way you have developed yourself, you're operating from a realm where you're like, hey, without me, the industry, cannot be able to really function properly. The industry will be incomplete without me. And I'll give you examples, right? So many entrepreneurs get to fail or get to remain small because they fail to pursue leverage. So you can see many people that are successfully small because they fail to pursue leverage that can position them in a place where they can set even the direction of an entire industry. And again, if you're thinking in terms of how can I create more wealth as a professional, this is something that you must be good at. Okay? So let me give you a thorough example of what I've been trying to explain to you. Let's take Apple, for example. I said I'll give you big company experience, then I take smaller companies from people here and explain it to you so you understand. But I want you to get this concept. Because if you get this concept and run with it, in a few months, you'll see a major shift in your business, major shift in your wealth creation journey. Okay. So let's take Apple, for example. You see how they applied this. Now, Apple's journey from a computer company majorly to being what you can call them today, Apple is a global ecosystem owner and builder. They are one of the clearest demonstrations of leverage. And how did they do this? Number one is that Apple leveraged their computer base. And everybody has a base in this life, right? So Apple began by mastering personal computers with their Macintosh model, right? And that's the base. Based on where you are right now, based on what you have right now, that is your base. Because the goal of the leverage and dominance model is to teach you how can you use what you have as your base and build wealth at a high level in your industry. So Apple started by leveraging their base, which was what? Computers at the time that they were making. So they began by mastering the personal computers with their Macintosh model. And they were not leaders in the computer business. They were not. But with their little computer business, they were able to build a loyal base of consumers who valued their style of computers. Consumers who valued their design, the usability, and how the computers were integrated. Now, the second thing they did was what you can call strategic entry into adjacent markets. Strategic entry into adjacent markets. So instead of remaining only with computers or staying only in the computer market, Apple expanded into adjacent categories or adjacent industries. For example, they launched the iPod. So they leveraged Apple software, the iTunes, right? The iTunes, some people may not know iTunes, but the iTunes plus the iPod to dominate the digital music distribution business. You see, they left the computer business and entered an adjacent market. And once millions of people were using iTunes and iPod, right? Apple controlled both the hardware and the content flow, thereby creating the habit where customers were literally just locked into their platforms. Customers wanted to be on their platforms. And that was their strategic entry into an adjacent market. And how did they do that? They did that by, first of all, leveraging the customer base they already had, by just creating more value and entering new markets and partnering with other existing markets or industries and combining the two. So we are seeing here the combination of technology and the music business coming together. You see that? And then the third thing that they did so well is what you can call platform control through the iPhone. Platform control through the iPhone. What does that mean? Now, iPhone became like a masterpiece of leverage. iPhone is not just a phone, and many other companies copied from them. iPhone is not just a phone. They created a phone that can become like a pocket computer. You're holding a phone, and in that phone there is music, thousands of music. In that phone, thousands of photos and videos, internet, communication, apps. That's platform control. So this transformed Apple literally into a gatekeeper of mobile innovation. They became majorly a voice in that, right? And then the fourth step that they did was that they did what I call ecosystem expansion. So Apple's leverage grew into dominance by interlinking products. They were interlinking different products. So that's why you if you buy all the Apple products, let's say the iPad, the Apple Watch, the Mac computers, the iPhone, all of them share the same operating systems, the same services, the same design, and all of that. You can answer your calls on your Apple Watch. It's just interlinked. And that was not guesswork because their goal is dominating the world. And there's no better way to dominate the world without ecosystem expansion. So you begin to see systems like iCloud, AirDrop, they are all continually tied into users across different devices, and thereby making it costly and even inconvenient for you to leave another phone or leave Apple to use another phone because when you think of all that you have that is locked in your Apple system, you don't want to leave Apple. I personally, for me, I don't think I'll ever change using Apple, the iPhone, right? Not because it's the best phone, basically, but because everything is linked. Everything is linked here and there, here and there. So the pain of trying to move all my systems into a whole new, maybe mobile phone operator or what have you, is so costly for me. And there are many people like that, right? Again, because their goal is how can I dominate the life of a customer? Now, I've given you an example of how a large company used the leverage and dominance model. Now, I want to give a local example. And I decided to pick somebody who runs a primary school. And I did that because one of my mentees runs a primary school, right? So now imagine that you run a primary school, a small primary school. Because of limited budget, you have just a few classes, you're just starting, you love education, and you said that, you know what, I don't just want to be a teacher, but I want to own a school. I want to own the school. Now, how can you how can somebody who is a primary school owner do the same thing that Apple did? How can they do that? So remember, they already own it. The goal of leverage and dominance model is how can you triple, 10x your wealth creation possibilities with what you already own by leveraging a few things and then using this strategy to dominate and triple or 10x the money that you make and the impact that you create in your industry. So let's say that you own a primary school, or as I'm talking about this, try to think how you can apply this in your industry or in what you do. So you own a primary school. The first step is leveraging the core of what you have, right? For example, Apple began with the computers. You see that? So the school owner begins with education in the primary school level. And the loyal base here are the parents who already, have children in the school that this person owns. So the parents already trust the teaching quality or the environment, or maybe the fee is affordable, different reasons that different parents decided to bring their kids to that particular school. So that's step one, is leveraging the core of what you already have. Now, step two is expanding into adjacent needs or areas in that education structure, right? So, for example, we saw that Apple moved from computers into music through iTunes, iPod, and things like that, right? So, somebody who owns a primary school, they can decide and say, you know what? The school can add after school programs, design it so well, and add a fee to it. So they can create sports program, music program, ICT program, Spanish or English or French extra classes, or even basic coding classes, what have you. But create after school programs. And the target here is that, you know what, when you create amazing after school programs to target parents that they don't get home until 6 p.m. and school closes by 3 p.m. or 2 p.m. So we create amazing programs that they can pay to keep their kids for extra 3 to 4 hours in school, for example. You see, that is expanding into adjacent needs that are available in the school. So, because parents already trust the school, parents would prefer those services over those that competitors are providing. You see. And then the third thing that that school owner can do is that, like what we saw, platform control, right? Apple created the iPhone. It became like the platform where they control and provide services to their various clients. So a school owner can also create platform control, or what you can call a learning hub. What does that mean? The school can create a learning hub where maybe that learning hub includes things like maybe they can have a mobile learning app with learning materials. They can create holiday programs. They can establish an amazing small library. They can establish weekend workshops for parents, like parenting seminars, child development training programs for parents, and so on. By doing this, the school becomes more than just a place for daily teaching. But the school throughout the year becomes a platform for child development and even parenting development. You see, and the more you're doing that, you're just going beyond just running a mere school. You're creating more wealth opportunities and becoming more influential in the education sector. You see, then step four, I spoke about ecosystem expansion. Like Apple expanded into iCloud and many other things. So if you run a school, you can start thinking of how can you be able to multiply what you're doing? How can you expand your ecosystem? Maybe you can introduce daycare for younger children. Maybe you can introduce secondary school for those who are graduating. Maybe you can add transport services. Because if parents put one child in a school, they are likely to bring their siblings or pay for transport or buy certain learning materials for the same school. You see, because the goal here is how do you create an interconnected service of network that locks a family entirely into your school? If you begin to think in terms of how can I own an ecosystem as far as this is concerned? You see that? You begin to think at that particular level. So the leverage and dominance model, if you are serious about wealth creation, you are serious about being a voice in your industry, you must think in this particular dimension, right? A restaurant owner can also do this. Yes. You run a restaurant, you can also do this. So you leverage the core. It's not the same process. You leverage the core. So the restaurant owner begins with selling meal because a typical restaurant sells food. All right. Start from there. That's the leverage. The loyal customers that eat from you consistently, that is your base. Leverage that core. Everybody starts from that core level. Then step two, you expand into adjacent needs or adjacent, opportunities like delivery and catering. How can you offer food delivery? How can you offer catering for birthdays and different programs? How can you sign special agreements with different companies to bring lunch packs to different offices for their staff, and staffs can pay you towards the end of the month? Different things. Because the customers who already love the food will naturally use other services. You see, a customer who eats from you consistently, you keep on marketing to them. Hey, we do special programs for birthday celebrations, marriage programs, and so on. You expand into adjacent needs. And then step three for a restaurant owner is we've spoke about platform control. This is where you do something like you create a food experience hub, right? So, for example, for a restaurant person, how can you create a loyalty card that anybody who has, like there's a restaurant that I used to, I went to do some work in a country, and they promoted a loyalty card to me, and they said, if you buy this card, if you own this card, and you pay a particular fee every month to be in our loyalty program, any food you eat here is 50%. Any day, anytime. All the food is half the price. You see, that is platform control. So since I was in a strange country, living in a hotel, I had some few weeks to be there to do some consulting work. I paid for the card for 1 month. And trust me, it was cheaper. You see, and there were some days I didn't go there. So indirectly, they made more money for me too. So it's good for me and good for them. But the goal is that you keep a customer locked to you. So even if I think of eating somewhere else, when I think of my loyalty card, I will have to go back to that restaurant. You see that? Or you can create a digital food ordering system for your clients who love your food. If they cannot come to eat at a restaurant, they can order through your platform and you deliver to them. You can even start offering cooking classes, record online videos to teach people how to cook the amazing food that you cook. You see, so for this person, this is no longer just a food business. It is a food experience platform. You see that? And then we spoke about ecosystem expansion. How can a restaurant owner practice ecosystem expansion? How can they expand? All right, you decide. You know what? How can I develop packaged versions of certain things that I make? How can I begin to package snacks? How can I begin to package special drinks? How can I add a small bakery to my restaurant on the side? How can I add a juice bar on the side under the same brand? So customers now buy meals, they buy snacks for their kids, they buy drinks, they buy, things from the bakery for their breakfast. You see, you create a whole ecosystem. You see that? So the leverage and dominance model is a mindset and a strategy that if you're in business, you need to learn how to use it. Okay? I know that is something that you cannot listen once and understand, right? It's being recorded. I will share it back in the communities. You go through again and begin to do an audit, especially if you're here and you run a business full-time or part-time. If you are serious about expansion, you are serious about increasing how much money you make as a business owner, you have to know how to do this. Okay? So, in this case, the goal is for you to understand that success is not enough. The goal is how can you demonstrate what I call market leadership, market dominance, a voice in that area. All right, quickly, 4 steps to leverage and practice dominance, and then we are done. 4 steps to practice all of these things I've been talking to you. Summarize it in a 4-step process. 4 step. Step number 1, position. Position. Establish authority in a high value phase, in a high value space. You have to position yourself. This is where, as a businessman, as a professional, you are asking the question, what niche do I dominate? What industry do I dominate? First thing you have to establish, position. Where will you establish authority? Which space do you recognize as a high value space? That's why I ask all of us a question. Which industry are you a voice in? You cannot lead in the whole economy. No, what makes the economy of a nation and a continent and even a global economy are the various industries that makes up the economy. And then the various institutions and companies under each industry makes up the industry, right? So the first step to you practicing leverage and dominance model is positioning. Establish authority in a high value space. And according to you, what is a high value space? I know my high value space. And you can better know your high value space depending on your talents, your giftings, your strengths, your purpose, your passions, your skill set, what you studied. You see, for somebody, a high value space is technology. For somebody, a high value space is agriculture. For somebody, a high value space is education. For somebody, a high value space is fashion. You see, because authority, hear me very well. Many people miss this, especially young people, right? Authority begins when an individual or a business selects a problem or an industry that holds high economic value according to what they want to do, or social value in a community or an industry, right? For example, if I have teaching skills and I'm passionate about teaching and training and all of that, I need to know the kind of business to select or the kind of problem to solve. And I should not select it based only on what I'm passionate about, because passion does not pay bills. That's why I use the word high economic value. So if you are selecting a problem, you are selecting a niche or an industry, you need to select a problem or a niche that holds a high economic value. Or for those who are in social enterprise sector or NGO, you start thinking of something or a niche that has a high social value. Because positioning requires visible competence. And if your competence is not visible, your positioning is going to struggle. So, when you pick an industry, as a professional, as a business person, one thing that you must be good at doing is ensuring that your expertise and the results that you create can consistently outweigh the noise of competitors. So, establishing your position demands clarity of the message that you are running with. And it demands your ability to recognize what unique value you are delivering in that particular industry. That's why I always say that true positioning will reinforce your reputation. True positioning will reinforce your reputation, or is reinforced by reputation. You see, in, when you are able to demonstrate reliability, when you are able to demonstrate quality, delivery of quality, when you're able to demonstrate measurable outcomes, you are able to position yourself as an authority in a high value space, right? So that's why one of the best ways to be able to build authority is by being the person that can consistently communicate ideas that clarify confusion within your chosen space. Like I always fondly say, you cannot call yourself a professional or an expert in an industry, and we cannot see things like articles you have written, or videos of you teaching about something, or a book you have written. But you should be publishing ideas to clarify confusion, to solve problems within your chosen space. That is why if you go to a good school, you want to finish your master's or undergraduate or PhD, you do a research, you publish something, a project, right? Because it is important that, hey, if we are going to recognize you as a professional or an expert, can you publish something to clarify confusion or to try to solve a complex problem in your chosen space? So it is important to do that. So you have to position yourself. You have to establish authority in a high value space if you are going to dominate and create wealth. So, for example, the healthcare is a huge industry. And I was talking to somebody and she wants to get into healthcare, into a healthcare business. And she wants to establish a clinic. I was like, that is good. But I want to challenge you. Can you sit with a clinic, do general consultation and many things? But I want you to think long term that in 10 years, when it comes to this particular area in healthcare, my clinic will be number one. For example, that's positioning. That's establishing authority in a high value space. So I started coaching and consulting her, and we started working back and forth. And I said, okay, you know what? Based on your passion, based on what you're good at, set a mission that within the next 10 years, when it comes to women's maternal care, you will be recognized as an authority that can solve any problem regarding anything that falls under women's maternal care. But she's still running a clinic that if you go there, you can consult about malaria, you can consult about headache, whatever, general pain, general consultations, that is good. But now, embedded in that clinic is a powerful mission. Remember, I was helping her to achieve leverage and dominance. It's a powerful mission that she's going to establish a clinic that when it comes to women's maternal care, she's going to be recognized as number one in that nation. That's step one, positioning, establishing authority in a high value space. So I want to ask you a question. You desire to make more money. You desire to create more wealth. You desire to be a voice in your nation, in your industry. Have you positioned yourself? If you have never thought of this, type work day. Type work day, right? But it's something to think about. If you are serious, this is something you have to think about and you have to run with. It's important, okay? It's important for you to work on. Like there's a clinic that I know of in Dubai. That clinic, they do general consultation, but that clinic is recognized as one of the number one clinic when it comes to managing chronic diseases, the management of chronic diseases. They are recognized for that. So rich people, when they have loved ones that they are sick and they are going through chronic pain and diseases, they go to that particular clinic in Dubai because they have established their position and established themselves in the healthcare industry, not just doing general things. No, they have gone beyond. They're like, you know what? When it comes to managing chronic diseases, we want to be recognized among the top 10 globally. So, what is your high value space? Where are you positioning yourself? If you already have your high value space, type yes in the chat box. If you are thinking, type the word thinking in the chat box. I want us to be communicating, right? Let me show that I've not, you guys are with me. So please, if you are here on the call, the least you can do is to respond to me, all right? Good, good. People say thinking, that's good. Yes, that's good. It means that there's some impact is going on as you listen to me. All right. So step two. So I said step one, position. The goal here is establish authority in a high value space. You are answering the question, which niche, which space do I dominate? Step two, expand. When you are positioned, the next thing to start thinking about is to expand. This is where you're looking at, how do I multiply my influence across adjacent markets? How can I control? This is why you're asking the question, how can I control more aspects of my industry? How can I control more aspects of my industry? You expand. You see that? Now, this is important because, let me say this way. You see, expansion occurs by your ability to identify various adjacent markets that you can get into, where you have current strength to get into without experiencing a lot of resistance. Because your influence in an industry multiplies when, as a business person, as a professional, you deliberately begin to integrate products and services that complement your original offering. So you must start by having an original product, an original service. But to multiply your influence and make more money and build more wealth, you need to start thinking in terms of, how can I deliberately create and integrate services and products that can complement the original offering that I have? You see, this one thing that made, for example, I run right now 7 training academies, right? 7 training academies. Most of those came to complement what people need. But I started with one, but I had to expand, and I tried to expand to create and record courses that can solve different problems that I identified that, hey, somebody can attend this program, but they will have this problem down here. So how can I solve this problem down here? All right, create an academy to start training people in that particular area. You get the perspective. So you begin to expand with that particular consciousness. For example, let me use agriculture. A farmer can start by cultivating corn or maize, right? And later on, the farmer can add poultry feed production. You see that? That's expanding, but adjacently. So you know what? Oh, many people run poultry farms. Oh, I produce a lot of corn, and sometimes I have a lot of waste. Oh, nice. You know what? Let me expand into feed production. He now begins to use maize as input for that new business lane. And he now starts the journey of controlling more of the agricultural value chain that he's part of. And that's how he makes more money. So expansion succeeds when you can be able to create more touch points with your customers, thereby reducing opportunities for investors to intervene and even take those customers away from you. And in this case, for you to successfully expand in business, you must think long term, and you must be disciplined, and you must be strategic to ensure that each venture that you are adding strengthens your major venture instead of causing the other venture to struggle. And I see this a lot with different clients I work with. Like I always tell people, because ideas come to your mind, it doesn't mean that you must execute the ideas. People are always trying to execute different things at the same time. And you see them doing something that dilutes what they have been doing. But if you're going to practice leverage and dominance model, one major point of view or mental model that you must practice consistently is to ensure that if you're launching a new idea, always ensure that the new idea strengthens your main idea, especially if you're starting. It is dangerous for you to launch an idea that is contrary or totally opposite to what you have been doing. It doesn't help you in any way. But you can do that if you have a lot of money, that you can recruit a whole new team, even appoint a general manager who can run a totally separate entity, and you can just supervise. You get the perspective. That's why, for example, somebody who runs a clinic, the person can effortlessly start buying and selling medical supplies. And the person can jump and establish a nursing school. You see that? But if the person jumps and say, you know what, I want to establish, give an example, um, a restaurant, right? People just get into things haphazardly without being strategic in the ideas that they select to work with. Okay, it's very important. So, and that's why there's an important concept to think about in terms of expanding is what they call upstream and downstream activities. Upstream and downstream activities. Because you begin to identify what are customers struggling with daily that above you or above what you're doing you can provide, and below you can provide. For example, the school example that we gave, you decide, you know what, apart from just running a primary school, you are going to establish a secondary school upstream. Or you know what, many parents in the community where you live or own a school, they are working class parents and they need daycare. All right, downstream. You begin to think from those particular perspectives. So you extend your solutions in terms of upstream and downstream. So those of you who run if companies right now and businesses, in terms of upstream, what can you begin to add? In terms of downstream, what can you begin to add? You see, there was a time I worked with a cooperative society in Cameroon. They were an agricultural cooperative, union per se in Cameroon. And they started, their members were into corn production, maize production, massive farming of corn or maize. And started working with them into looking at how can we begin to expand your activities into packaging, into you running a farm input supply business. How can we establish a training arm, a farmer training institute to your cooperative? You see what I was doing with them there? That's expansion. And in less than no time, they literally tripled how much money they were making. That's why I'm saying that if you're thinking of, I want to make more money as a business person, you need to know how to do this. All right. So you can now see that the goal was that I was trying to help them to bring them to a place where they can control both the farming, the production, and the knowledge channels of that particular ecosystem. That way they became indispensable across the local food economy where they were operating. So start thinking in terms of expansion if you're going to use the leverage and dominance model to increase your wealth creation possibilities. If you're learning something, type learning in the chat box. Are you picking up key things that are helping you? I'm giving you a master class that people pay a lot of money to get. But this is my birthday gift to you. Right? All right. So let's look at number 3. What is the third step in terms of leverage and dominance model that can help you to create more wealth? Systemization, right? Systemize what you are doing. In other words, can you institutionalize what you're doing? How can you use systems to perpetuate influence, to increase your influence? In other words, how can you create entities, systematic strategies that can solidify your leadership in that industry? So you need to begin to think in terms of systems, structures, policies that can allow the business to operate beyond your personal effort. You cannot make more money if you are not systemizing what you're doing. For example, years ago when I started training, if I was ever going to make money from training, I need to organize a live program on site, train people myself consistently before I can make money. Or I need to do a live Zoom like this before I can make money. But when I systemized my different training programs, recorded courses, created almost 7 academies today, whether I am training or not, I am making money from training because somebody is paying for my courses somewhere around the world. That's you cannot perpetuate influence and increase money-making opportunities if you don't know how to systemize what you're doing. So the goal of step 3 is how can you use systems? How can you use structures? How can you use policies that can allow the business to operate beyond your personal efforts and double your wealth creation possibilities? So, as a business leader, as an executive, as a working professional, your leadership becomes impactful when the knowledge that you have or the processes that your business runs upon are transferred into either training, into documentation, or into repeatable standards. How can you do that? That's why one of the most important things you can do as an expert, as a business person, is documenting your proprietary processes, documenting your systems into standard operating procedures, into handbooks that can outlive you as a person. Or that when a staff leaves, the system remains. You see that? How can you build platforms that can enable you to formalize whatever you're doing? And in this generation, you cannot talk about systemizing anything without talking about creating automated systems. What kind of digital platforms can you use to automate your systems where certain things can operate smoothly and effectively even in your absence? How can you do that? You see, so you must think of systemizing or enterprising whatever you're doing, or creating an institution that can expand what you're doing. For example, there was a guy in Ghana that I worked with that he ran a technology startup, and they were so good at creating unique proprietary softwares. And companies were using their softwares, right? So they decided to establish a, a software training academy in order to train job seekers and even employees from other company on how to use their proprietary system and how to maintain or update their proprietary system in the companies that are using their system. You see, that's an example of systemizing or enterprising what they have developed. It's the same like in at the global scale, there are people that are certified, what they call, Amazon Web Service practitioners or experts and so on. Or that's why you look, Google has Google Academy, Facebook has Marketplace Academy, right? Microsoft has their own. These companies create these training academies or training institutes in order to systemize and enterprise what they're doing at that particular level. Because if you are going to ensure that your influence goes beyond you and beyond what you're building, you must systemize everything you're doing or part of it at some level. So that's step 3 is very important. Step 4, and then we can round up, is monopolize. But not in, unfortunately, we're taught that monopoly is bad, but I'm going to explain what it means in terms of strategy here. If you're going to be a voice in your industry, you must have a monopoly thinking mindset. Not to kick people out, but to be a major voice. How can you be a stakeholder in the industry that you shape the future of the industry? You're a major player in how the industry evolves. You begin to think of what role can I play in dictating where the industry goes next. You see that? Because, like I said, monopolization is not about destroying your competitors. No. It is about thinking smarter in terms of how can you design conditions where competitors must adjust or depend on you to survive. And I want to show you how companies are doing that. Many people don't see it, but I'm going to show you how they're using monopoly to do that. Because dominance at this level requires you to be able to create a strategy or create an infrastructure that others cannot bypass, but they have no option than to depend on it. Remember, if you are thinking in terms of dominance, in terms of being a voice in your industry, in your nation, you must have a monopolizing mindset. But not to kick people out, but how can you create strategies, infrastructures, frameworks, systems that will force other people to depend on you? I want to show you how this is practical in companies around the world. For example, there's something known as cloud computing, right? A good number of people should know cloud computing. Now, this is where players like Amazon Web Services operate. This is where players like Microsoft Azure operate. This is where players like Google Cloud, they operate, right? These guys, they own the backbone of digital infrastructure that startups, governments, including US government, and even their own competitors depend on them for server space, for storage space at a global scale. So there are many companies that without Amazon Web Services, they're going to shut down. Without Microsoft Azure, they're going to shut down. Without Google Cloud, they're going to shut down. In short, without some of these institutions, major industries are going to be limited. You see, for example, Netflix, the movies that you watch on Netflix, without, Amazon Web Services or without Microsoft Azure or without Google Cloud, Netflix cannot operate. They need that cloud computing space to host their movies and people can watch around the world. Same for Facebook. Same for YouTube. You see that? So there are many of these giants that they literally monopolize a sector, and hundreds and thousands of businesses depend on them. In fact, this Zoom that we're using to be able to stream, without cloud computing, it cannot happen. So Zoom literally depends on the company providing the cloud computing to them. You see that? Okay, what about streaming platforms? Netflix, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Prime. These guys, they own the pipes through which content is distributed. You see that? There are many people, let's say content creators. If YouTube shut down today, many families will not eat for years. I'm telling you, there are people that make millions on YouTube every month. You get the perspective. So, YouTube, Netflix, Spotify, what have you, they are using this monopolizing strategy to own the infrastructure that others can depend on them. So, musicians, filmmakers, educators, they rely on them to access global audience. You see, so they keep focusing on how can we create a better streaming platform? How can we create a platform that others can keep depending on us? You see, that is why it is the platform that sets the rules for monetization. That's why it is Facebook that sets the rules for monetization. They don't care about what you want. They decide how much they pay you per view. You can argue and cry and do whatever. They decide the countries that can be part of monetization. You don't have any option. Why? They set the rules of monetization because they own the infrastructure. So you are at their mercy. You are at their mercy. Right? So if you are going to double wealth creation, you have to know how to do this. I can talk about payment gateways like Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, and Stripe. These guys have created infrastructure. They control the pathways of digital payments. So almost every online business around the world, from e-commerce to subscription model, must pass through them to complete transactions. So this gives these guys enormous leverage to be a voice, monopolize thinking. How can we create a payment gateway that millions would depend on us to transact online? I'm giving this example so that as a businessman, you begin to think in this light. What about mobile operating systems? Look at Android, owned by Google. Every Android phone around the world is if Google decide today, now, and shut down Android, oh my goodness, families will not communicate for months. Same for Apple, iOS. You see, they have created the infrastructure and they literally own the ecosystem of mobile apps. So app developers, hardware makers, service providers cannot bypass Apple or Google approval system. So Google and Apple, they have created a dependency across industries. Millions of companies depend on Android. Millions of companies depend on iOS. Millions of individuals. Every human being that owns a phone today depends on either Android, iOS, Hawaii, and a few other small players in the industry. But they got here by thinking in terms of leverage and monopolistic thinking. It's not about kicking others out. It's about how do we create a system that others can depend on us? How do we do that? You think at that level. You think at that level. So I want to challenge you, business people. If you are going to create wealth in your industry where you are, at the level where you are, you need to think in terms of dominance and what I'm telling you. See, a few days ago, somebody participated. She took a program in one of my academies and later discovered that she has this problem. I said, yes, you can take this other program under this academy and solve the problem. Before she was done, she attended 4 academies. That's the goal. How can you create a system that others can depend on you to consume your value? While they're doing that, you're making money at the same time. Like the examples of the school that we gave. You begin to expand and then you own a daycare. nursery school, primary school, secondary school, and even university. A family can have 5 kids and all of them pass through your school. That means you're a major player or a major consumer of their wealth, right? Because you're thinking in terms of leverage and dominance. And if you're going to operate at this level, like I said, you don't guess work and make things like this happen. You don't assume and make, you cannot be lazy and make it happen. There's a kind of mindset. You must invest in research that defines the next decade. You don't think in terms of months and weeks. You think in terms of years and even decades. You focus on how can I establish thought leadership across different platforms. You begin to think of, hey, how can I be one of the organizations and professionals that can shape the future of industry and defines the roles of engagement based on how business is conducted. So I want to challenge you. One major aim of this particular topic today was to challenge many people that you are too comfortable, that making small money here and there is not enough. How can you come to a place where you are manifesting what I call market leadership? You're a category king in what you do, in your nation, in your community, why not continentally, why not globally? And you think at that level, and you build at that level, and you have a 50-year plan, 30 years plan, that I'm going to be a category king, a market leader, industry voice in this area, in this area, in this area. Because this is one of the major things that separates the elite from the average. Average people wait for opportunities. Elite thinkers maximize what they already have at a higher scale. Small-minded people, average people seek for success so they can post on their status and WhatsApp and show how they're doing well. But the elites look at how can I create dominance at a high level. Average people consume resources, serious consumers. But an elite thinker begins to focus, how can I multiply, reinvest, and expand what I am doing? So start thinking in terms of disrupting, redefining, and being a major player in the future of your industry, your sector, and your country. And I challenge you, if you practice the frameworks that we have handled on day 1, day 2, and day 3, there are many things that you can correct. And in the next few months, and you can enter next year with a major strategy plan that when you begin to execute, you will see profound results in what you are building or you're set to build. All right, that is it for today. And I can get a few questions. All right, if you are challenged today, can you type the word challenge in the chat box? If somebody says, I am challenged, did you learn something? You learned something that you can use. All right. Questions. I can take 2 questions maximum and we're good to go. Any questions for me? Any questions for me? If not, then I have successfully delivered my birthday gift to you guys. Any questions, raise up your hand, or you can type in the chat box. YouTube, Facebook, you have a question, please, you can ask somebody who will pick it and communicate it here. Beautiful. Right. Right. It seems that there are no questions, so I hope that you go and apply what you've learned. And if you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do, because I always record videos around areas like this, insights like this, and I share them on my YouTube channel. And those who are subscribers, always, I hardly talk about my YouTube channel, but it's there, and I share a lot of amazing videos there on topics like this. So you can just go and search Dr. Javnyuy Joybert, and you can subscribe. And you can also see there are more than 1,000 videos on that channel. So different things I've covered, and I get incredible feedbacks every day from people who spend time on that channel. All right, if there are no questions, then that is it for today. God bless you, keep you all. And for those who are members of PEFR, you know that we are meeting at 4 a.m. for a special time. All right, guys, cheers.